The Great Migrations and Immigrations of America by Joe Reyes. The Trail of Tears was a great Native American movement that took place in 1831. Over 5 civilized tribes were moved from their homelands in the South to present-day Oklahoma. This was called the Indian Removal Act of 1930 and was implemented by Henry Knox. A total of 46,000 Native Americans were moved. During the Civil War from 1861 to 1865, roughly 200,000 blacks served in the war, and 100,000 of them fought unwillingly with the Confederates. Blacks that fought for the South were treated as if they were animals, and once the war was over, thousands of black slaves fled the South to live in the North to have a much better life. This video reveals how blacks were treated in the South.
No more auction block for me. No more, no more. No more auction block for me. Many thousand No more pint of salt for me. No more, no more. No more pint of salt for me. Many thousand No more driver's lash for me. No more, no more. No more driver's lash for me. Though many thousand
Chinese immigrants came to the United States in the mid-1850s during the California Gold Rush. They all came through Angel Island, which was very much like Ellis Island, but the only difference was it was on the west coast. A lot of Chinese immigrants came during the late 1800s. They were the biggest contributors to the construction of the railroad, and they moved wherever the railroad took them. Most of the Chinese immigrants stayed in the San Francisco area and opened up dry cleanings. An incident occurred up in Wyoming territory where Chinese miners were chased out of town by angry townsmen, killing 15 of them. Exodusters was a name given to blacks that fled the South to the state of Kansas from 1879 to 1880. The blacks fled to Kansas after the end of Reconstruction because they were afraid that slavery may be reinstituted. Blacks were charged $5 if they wanted to get to Kansas unharmed. This video is an example of what some blacks did.
Bank were robbed. Took all we had. They killed 4 decent folk.
I've been known to work on the side of angels for the right price.
Can't wait to tell Eli I shot me a high-tony Negro.
Tell me, would you call yourself a man of peace?
I'm a peaceable man. I just keep running into unpeaceable folk.
With your education, you could have improved someone's life. You still breathing, ain't you?
You must find a way to change your life. You can't kill again for profit.
The sheriff's job's open.
You've been working extra hard to kill Jackson.
This whole deal smells of Eli.
Joke's on you, gunfighter. Eli's a lot closer to you than you are to him.
Go in peace and sin no more.
The Great Migration was a movement of 1.3 million African Americans from the southern states to the northern and western states of America from 1915 to 1930. African Americans migrated in search of a better life and to leave a life of racism. The Great Migration became one of the United States' largest migrations. The Great Migration of 2.5 million Scandinavians to America took place between 1830 to 1930. Those people from Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and Iceland came to the New World in search of a better life. They left to escape political and social upheaval, government corruption, and powerful state churches, not to mention the agricultural disasters, making it difficult to sustain their families in their homelands. By the middle of the 19th century, the time was ripe for massive migration, and they began to arrive in the American ports by tens of thousands. In doing so, they filled the Great Plains and the cities of the North. They founded new, distinctive communities from Connecticut to California, and they helped build the America of the 20th century. By the end of 1854, nearly 2 million people, or roughly a quarter of Ireland's population, had immigrated to the United States in 10 years. This was mainly due to the disastrous famine from 1845 to 1850, resulting from the failure of the potato crop caused by potato blight, ruining about 3/4 of the country's crop supply. Although Italy as a unified nation didn't exist until 1861, the Italian peninsula had sent millions of its people to the shores of the New World in search of a better life, freedom of religion, and to escape the unhealthiness of life of their homeland. These new arrivals thought of themselves as Neapolitans, Sicilians, Calabrians, or Circassians. They might not have understood each other's dialects, but on arrival to the United States, they became Italian Americans. By the turn of the 20th century, they would be ready to change the continent once more. From 1876 to 1976, the United States was the largest single recipient of Italian immigrants in the world. In 1869, Japanese settlers from the Wakamatsu tea and silk farm colony were among the first to arrive from Japan. By 1890, over 2,000 Japanese resided in the United States. Japanese immigration continued until 1907, when a campaign from white supremacist organizations, labor unions, and politicians resulted in a gentleman's agreement curtailing immigrations of laborers from Japan. Japanese Americans had suffered from discrimination, legislations, and restrictions. They immigrated to the United States as a source of labor without plans for them to stay and participate actively in the life of society. Beginning in 1909 and continuing until after World War II, anti-Japanese bills were introduced into the California legislatures every year. The most serious discriminatory act towards Japanese Americans was the internment camp policy of World War II. 13 temporary detention camps in California were hastily established to hold Japanese Americans. The constitutionality of incarcerating more than 120,000 Japanese Americans is still being questioned. Mexican immigrants, along with their Mexican American descendants, occupy a unique place in the story of U.S. immigration. They are known by many different names, come from divergent origins, and took widely different paths to becoming part of the United States landscape. Today, millions of people in the United States identify themselves as Mexican Americans. They are unique in that both they are the oldest and newest inhabitants of America. Thank you for watching and listening to my movie. I hope I was able to teach you something about the demographic changes of America over the past 400 years.
From writers and critics who prophesize with your pen, And keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin. And there's no telling who that it's naming. For the loser now will be later to win. For the times they are changing.